So on this episode, we are going to do something a little different. For the previous two hikes that we did, it was a mountain range system. First the Cascades and then the Olympic. Oh, that is cold. Oh, sorry about that. So for this episode, we're going to go to a different part of Olympic National Park. One of the beautiful things about Olympic National Park is how incredibly diverse the entire ecosystem here is. For yesterday's hike, we went up to Hurricane Ridge in the very high country in the mountains of the Olympic National Park and the Olympic Mountains itself, which the park gets its name from. Today we're going to be discovering the Pacific coastline of Olympic National Park. And for the first hike today, we're going to go to a spot called Rialto Beach. And we'll go on a hike called the Hole in the Wall Trail. As you can see, it's definitely a very different environment compared to the Olympic Mountains, but it's still a gorgeous, rugged Pacific coastline. And as I just discovered a couple seconds ago, the water is exceptionally cold. Here we go again. It's gorgeous, but very, very chilly. So I hope you guys enjoy this. This time it's going to be the same idea as last time. The primary scope that we're going to have is, well, the primary subject is going to be the Pacific Ocean itself. But we're also going to start looking for foreground, mid-ground. In this case, what I'm going to be looking for is various interesting tree formations, various rock formations to have as central pieces going around the Pacific Ocean to make sure we have something interesting in each part of the picture. This is going to be my first time on this trail, so I'm not quite sure what to expect. I don't have anything pre-planned in terms of what stops to make. So we're just going to wing it as we go and see what stands out. For anyone who's interested in coming to Yellowstone National Park, one thing to keep in mind is the sheer size of the park. It shouldn't detract you from coming to the park, but it is something to know ahead of time in order to be prepared and plan accordingly. For example, getting from where we stayed, the Fort Angeles area, which is the largest city in the region, the Olympic Peninsula, getting from there to the beach that you're seeing around you right now is roughly a 2-hour drive. It is definitely will take a couple hours to get from majority of the park to the other parts. So now we got to our first spot where I'm going to talk about photography. So like I said earlier, we're going to try getting the foreground, mid-ground. Right now, the mid-ground is going to be essentially dominated by the ocean. If you can't hear me, sorry about that. I know it's quite loud right now. But what we're using as the foreground right now is the tree trunk here in front of us. What we're also going to do is we're going to line up the tree trunk so it's pointing towards that island that's off in the back, there in the background. What we're trying to do is we're trying to draw the viewer's eye in a straight line path using that towards another central focus item. And we're going to line it up so we have a fair amount of the tree trunk, a bit of the forest on the left, and we're going to line up so the island is in the bottom, top 1/3. And there's your shot. Yeah, so this next photograph that we're going to be talking about is going to be looking at a semi-framing technique, but essentially we're using the two rocks you see right in front of us as the two objects of interest that we're going to put on the left and right quadrants, with the foreground being the beach itself and the ocean taking up the mid-ground. So we're going to line it up to keep the left and right quadrant fairly interesting topics. We have the one rock on the left quadrant, the other rock on the right quadrant, as well as some of the a little bit more of the woodlands and other rocks that are further to the right. Keep the bottom third of the photo the sand itself. Unfortunately, there's not another object of interest to put in the way of the foreground, but we're still going to line it up just like this, and there's your shot. Another thing that, if you notice what I did, is I waited for the waves to come in and kind of take up a little bit more of the foreground. So it's not quite the object of interest I was hoping for the foreground, but it does provide a little bit more little more action to the beginning of the picture, to the foreground of the picture. So now we reached the end of our trail here on day 3 in Washington State. Now we are at the reason that this trail is called the Hole in the Wall Trail. This marks the end where clearly you have a very large rock outcrop with a hole that's been eroded right in the middle of it. And amazingly enough, on the other side of that hole, you can very well frame the rocks that we were looking at for the majority of our hike earlier on. So now we're going to go over a very clear framing technique for a potential very nice picture. So obviously we're going to take the rock that we have there in the middle, place it there, put about 1/3 of the rock in the top of the picture. We're going to put a fair amount of the water and outcrop the bottom at the bottom of the picture, and we are going to center the rock that we had there. And the trick is going to be coming up with a happy medium for a light. So we want to make sure that we have enough light where you can see a fair amount of definition in the rock in front of us, but that we don't drown out the rock there in the middle. Unfortunately, the sun's not with us today, so it'll be a little harder, but that looks like it should work right there. And there's your shot. So for anyone who's curious about the accessibility of this beach, it is actually very easy to get to. Although it's a far drive to get here from Port Angeles, like I said, roughly a 2-hour drive. Once you get there, the parking lot is right next to the beach itself. So you simply have to park the car, and then you have a nice 3 to 5 mile hike that you can go on once you go on the beach itself. Very accessible, very difficult to get lost. It's simply follow the coast itself, follow the waves, go as far as you want, and then simply turn around and head back the same way you came. The rest of the video is going to be going over some of the other beaches that we have in this area. The first one that we're going to be going over is a beach known as Third Beach. It's about a little less than an hour drive south from the previous Rialto Beach. The terrain is very similar. You have a rugged Pacific coastline, sandy beaches, very rugged geological features jutting out of the water. One nice thing about this beach that we're looking at right now is prior to reaching the beach itself, you have about a mile and a half walk going through very old growth forest, which in itself is a very nice hike. You start at the parking lot, you go about a mile and a half, and then you come out on this beach right here, so you have a bit of a seclusion factor when you have this beach. This comes in handy the first time I visited this park, where I actually spent the night camping on this specific park, which was a very nice experience on its own right. The final beach that we're going to be talking about for this video is one known as Ruby Beach. This one's an additional roughly 30 to 45 minute drive south from the previous beach, Third Beach. This one, once again, we have a very scenic stretch of beach, very nice for hiking. Not very fine sand, so it's better to wear shoes on this one, but in terms of view, it is a very nice setting and well worth the visit on its own.